Today here at the PSG channel, we're going to cover the lore to one of my favorite games, Fortnite, going all the way back to the beginning to now. Some of this is going to be very difficult to get as footage, so you may just see me playing Fortnite in between it, but I'm going to do my best to explain what is known and not a confirmed theory, because there's a lot of theories as to what is actually going on in the world of Fortnite. The IO Corporation has put together an island using the 0 point. This ball of energy connects all known realities, and the IO use it to create a loop. Utilizing their battle bus, 100 combatants are dropped onto the island and fought until only one remains. However, as much fun as it was not going to last. A light began to shine in the sky, growing brighter with each passing day, and it was soon discovered to be a comet that was heading directly for the island. As the comet drew closer, smaller debris began to strike all over that island, creating large craters and destroying several of the buildings that the IO had pulled throughout the realities to populate their island. Luckily, this just created new cover for the combatants, and the battle royales continued. It was May 1st, 2018 that the comet had finally struck the island. Along with the main comet, smaller debris had peppered the island, destroying several buildings and leaving behind glowing rocks that held a strange energy when struck. This would allow someone to become nearly weightless and bounce through the air. For some reason, the island was used to begin filming a movie about the comet's impact and heroes and villains around the island. The destruction allowed the villain known as Omega to escape on the island, and he began to build a lair for himself and fight against Carbide, who owned his own superhero mansion. Meanwhile, the government began to clean up the island, removing the hop rocks and their strange energy. They began to use the meteor energy to power a rocket that they were building in secret. During this time, the government also discovered that the inside of the comet had held an alien being known as the Visitor. The Visitor broke free and headed to Omega's lair. He began to work with the rocket, and even though it was only a movie prop, he powered it up with hop rocks. It was in June of 2018 that the rocket was launched, and it arced through the air, disappearing within a rift. The rocket began to fly in and out of rifts throughout the island, causing destruction everywhere that it appeared. And it seemed that the hop rocks that were powering these rifts and the world the island had linked to began to merge. Rifts began to open up all over the island, some swallowing objects and buildings, while others spit out objects and new buildings. As new locations appeared, so did new vehicles. All of this was simply used by the 100 combatants, and no one really worried about it. However, a crack appeared in the sky over the desert, and it began to spit out lightning. Eventually, the lightning condensed into a cube of energy and the crack disappeared. The cube began to glow purple and would shoot lightning at any combatant that threatened it. In September, the cube slid into Loot Lake, and it began to dissolve in the water, changing the consistency of the lake and allowing the combatants to bounce on it. Several days later, the cube returned, and it created a floating island in the middle of Loot Lake. As the water poured into this newly made hole, it disappeared, and no combatants could enter. The corrupted areas began to appear across the island as well. Eventually, these corrupted areas ripped free of the island, floating over Loot Lake Island. Eventually, the cube exploded and carved the island up. Several shards of that cube scattered across it, and the cube monsters began to roam around. It was in November that the remains of the cube exploded again. All of the players on the island were brought into the in-between dimension, and the players met the Rift Butterfly that brought them back to the island. The cube and the floating island dropped back into the lake, and a strange parachute with a globe between two camera lenses appeared at Flush Factory. A robot named AIM began to scout the island, and a large iceberg appeared in the distance. It was December that the iceberg slammed into the southwest side of the island, large areas of the map now covered in snow, creating new conditions of the Battle Royale. Eventually, some of the snow began to melt and reveal a large castle, and inside was the Ice King and his prisoner. It was revealed that the Ice King lived in the iceberg and crashed it into the island so that he could rule it. While the prisoner was trapped in ice, the temperatures of the island began to thaw him. The Ice King used the power of the cube shards to power himself, creating a blizzard that covered the entirety of the island. However, the prisoner finally escaped and his powers grew. As the snow began to melt around him, it was revealed that the prisoner was actually the Fire King. So fire and ice began to fight, causing earthquakes that would shake the island. In February 2019, the Fire King used his powers to transform the Wailing Woods into a jungle. A large volcano also erupted from the ground. The government returned and began to dig throughout the island, creating volcano vents and large pits of lava. After this, 5 ruins appeared across the island and are brought to a vault over Loot Lake. After the ruins have been activated, the volcano would then begin to smoke. Once the vault was activated, it was revealed that the ruins had transformed it into a rift to the in-between. It is here that the combatants voted for a new weapon to be introduced to the island. And after the drum gun was unveiled, the volcano erupted, destroying large portions of the island. May 9th saw the damaged portions of the island replaced with new buildings and features. The government also moved in to put a pressure plate over the now active volcano. The activated vault also created new slipstreams that made getting around the island much faster. It was revealed that the vault also held the energy known as the 0 point, which allowed for the creation and destruction of various locations. Weeks would pass, and Polar Peak began to collapse, revealing a large monster. Time would pass, and the players could see the monster at various times. But it also attacked certain buildings. And to fight the monster, now known as the Devourer, the government began to build a mech in the pressure plate building. Eventually, the Devourer would come out of the water to attack the vault. The government activated their mech and the two began to battle. The mech destroyed the entrance to the vault, defeating the monster with a large sword. And with this monster dead, the mech launched itself into space, leaving its large sword behind. After the final showdown, the 0 point exploded, breaking time, causing various locations throughout the map to return to their original state before the meteor struck. Once again, the meteors appeared all over the map, but seemingly frozen in time. The visitor once again re-emerged, setting up his base at Dusty Depot. There he created a rift beacon and began to open up rifts throughout the map, and with each rift the visitor opened, new cracks would also form in the sky. Using the rifts, the visitor would once again begin to build his rocket. The rocket launched again on October 13th, and once again, it flew through the rift and began to appear across the map. This time though, more rockets began to emerge from the cracks in the sky. The rockets then flew all around the map, creating a large rift that the meteor would fall into, preventing it from crashing into the world again. The meteor would come out at another rift, ramming into the 0 point, the resulting explosion creating a black hole that sucked the entire island into it. 2 days passed where only a message was seen. I was not alone. There are others outside the loop. Nothing is now inevitable. After that, the black hole dies and reality is created once again. The island is vastly different, though some of the locations remain the same. There are now two factions fighting for control of the island, the Ego and Alter factions. The two sides fought constantly, with the leader of Alter, Chaos Agent, creating soldiers to fight. The two sides continued their battle, changing their names to Ghost and Shadow. Ghost is taken over by the mysterious Midas, and both organizations begin to set up spy locations throughout the island. Both organizations then begin to fight over key locations with their soldiers, including Deadpool. Eventually, Midas builds a doomsday device that takes control of the storm. The doomsday device is then activated and begins to push the storm back, and with the storm pushed to the edge, the loop of the island is seemingly stopped. However, the storm itself turns into a large tsunami instead. After the doomsday device is shut down, the storm can't hold back the tsunami, and it washes over the island. Several places are flooded or destroyed, and with the wave washing over the island, Midas is eaten by a shark. Becoming a ghost, he starts to plot his revenge. And after the destruction of the island, Shadow creates the Authority, gaining control of the island. The remains of Ghost create a rebellion against the Authority, fighting from Fortilla. At this time, the Vinder Tech Corporation begins to work with a lot of auto and put gas-powered vehicles around the map. The combatants then use these new vehicles in their constant battles, the flood eventually draining away and the island becoming more manageable again. The draining of the island also reveals Coral Castle, which is ruled by Aquaman. The time continues and a spaceship crashes into the water. The astronaut is known as Dio, and his mission is to explore a new planet. Discovering that his ship is damaged, he begins to scavenge parts throughout the map. However, once the fixed spaceship left the planet, it went through the rift and re-emerged on the island. Dio once again disembarks and begins to search for the island. While in another reality, Thor of Asgard passes through a rift appearing on the island. Hoping to warn the people of the coming of Galactus, Thor begins to fight against those on the island. He begins to forget everything about himself, and eventually he forgets everything and loses his hammer. When Galactus arrived, Thor regains some of his memories, warning Lady Sif, who guards the Bifrost. Sif gathers heroes from the Marvel Universe, bringing them to the island, and upon their arrival, they begin to lose their memories. The heroes then begin to travel around the map, trying to remember what they had lost, and during this time, both Shadow and Ghost seem to disappear, leaving behind empty spy locations. All of the heroes begin to regain their powers and memories, and Tony Stark begins to work with Vindertech to upgrade the battle bus. As the other heroes begin to arrive, they wait for Galactus' arrival. Once he gets there, he attacks the island. Reaching down, he pulls out the 0 point from the ruins, and he begins to absorb the energy. Tony brings everyone to the in-between, and in this dimension, Tony created several battle buses by using the loop. Filling them with gamma cells, they fly the battle buses into Galactus before he finishes consuming the Zero Point. The Zero Point continues to weaken, revealing the universe around them, but the players eventually get Galactus' attention and fly their battle buses directly into him. Galactus then begins to absorb the energy from the battle buses. They all explode and they create a rift that brings Galactus back to the Marvel Universe. However, in the headquarters of the Imagined Order, the IO, Agent Jones wakes up on the floor of his office gasping. He sits at his desk answering the phone. His superior informs him that the Zero Point is very weak and unstable, and she orders him to go into the loop and reseal the bridge, not allowing anyone to escape in the process. Grabbing a rift device, Jones heads to track 7 hunters throughout reality. He's pulled into the Zero Point alongside his hunters, and the hunters are given the job of causing chaos, hunting bounties, and stopping people from escaping the loop. Agent Jones continues to gather the hunters, but every time he jumps through the loop and returns, it becomes more unstable. Eventually, the Zero Point is weakened and it begins to crack, expelling energy. Agent Jones finally realizes that the IO isn't going to do anything about the Zero Point destabilizing, and he begins to try and fix it himself. He begins to gather information about the Seven, a strange interdimensional group. His superiors ordered him not to search for the Seven, but Jones believes that they are the only ones who can save reality. Jones made his way to the Zero Point, threw his looper into it, and waited, and moments passed as a meteor from another dimension crashed into the sand nearby. Inside is the Foundation, leader of the Seven. Fighting for several seconds, Jones and the Foundation come to a truce. The Foundation gives Jones the device that he traveled through the loop with and tries to contain the Zero Point. As the Foundation continued to work, portals began to open up across the island, with Jones warning the players about the side effects of the Zero Point destabilizing, known as reality waves. Suddenly, a wave hits them and Jones is transformed into the Rift Butterfly. As Jones and the Looper try to close the portals, the Zero Point begins to bloom. The Foundation informs Jones that he must overload the Rift device to stabilize the Zero Point, but doing so will also trap them within the loop. He explains that Jones will have to find him and tell him everything. Jones agrees, overloading the device, throwing it into the Zero Point, when suddenly the spire that holds the Zero Point becomes covered in stone and traps the Foundation. Reality waves sweep through the map, covering large areas in a primal jungle. Technology is gone. Smaller spires have begun to appear at the edges of the map, and spire assassins are guarding them. After everything, the IO goes into hiding, leaving Jones alone on the map. Like all the other combatants trapped within the loop, he begins to lose all of his memories, but he continues to find a way to return to the Foundation. Now, there's a lot more to this than even that. That is already a rather large story, isn't it, guys? But there's more to this. Things like the Seven have been implied for a long time. There's more information on the Visitor, but this is just the core plot so you know where we are in the storyline. This brings you up to the current season, and the only real stuff that you have missed at this point is dinosaurs got introduced, Lara Croft showed up, and now Batman is stuck in the loop. The comic book just dropped when I'm recording this, and Batman is now stuck there, losing his memories, trying to find a way out. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and if you did, let me know in the comments down below. Benny, I want to know what happens next. You can't end the story here, and don't forget to check out as we cover all your favorite lore discussions and news right here at PSG. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.